Hi, Anne. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Hope you're doing well.
Yes, yes. So, friends, I wanted Anne Barnwell to come on the show today because she is an expert. So, let me tell you a little bit about Anne. So, Anne began writing resumes as a college student back in the career services day. She was in the career development office. I was in career services, so we have a commonality there. She loved writing resumes so much and critiquing them that she decided she wanted to have a career in it later in life. She didn't realize it at the time, but then in 2018, she decided to go full force and start her own business.
hmm
She has a business called make sure I get it right, The Right Resumes. I
hmm
love it. I love it. Perfect name. Where she crafts resumes, she does cover letters, she does LinkedIn profiles, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Anne has earned many certifications on the career front, and she's still earning more. She does have the LinkedIn profile certification as well as several resume certifications. However, the reason I wanted Anne on the show today was because of her experience having to relaunch a career after being out of the workforce for 12 years. I get a lot of clients, and I know you do too, Anne,
Oh, yeah.
that struggle to get back in, those stay-at-home moms, career transition, sabbaticals from work. I'm in
hmm
academia as well, and sometimes we take time off to write, and then trying to get back into the workforce. It's not as easy. So, because Anne has done that, and she's done that successfully, in addition to having her own business, again called The Right Resume, she still works in corporate America. She is, make sure I got this right, corporate communications for a financial investments firm, and also has experience in executive communication, nonprofit communications, and social media marketing. So, again, thank you so much, Anne. I'm glad you're on the show. And now I can ask you those questions that my clients always ask me. And I know you're going to have a great answers. So, without further ado, thank you again so much. I appreciate the opportunity to have you on. I know you are a busy, busy woman. And I'm going to go ahead and bring those questions up so we can get right to it for our audience.
Awesome. Well, it's a topic I'm passionate about.
Good, good. All right. So the first question, Anne, is if you have been out of the workforce for several years, can you jump back in?
Yeah, of course you can. And I'm living proof of that. And so are plenty of other men and women who have left the workforce for whatever reason and are ready to come back in. What I would say is when you do that, you have to be more strategic and plan that. And you're planning not just for your first step, but you should be looking ahead to how am I going to enter back in? And then where will I be a year from now or 2 years from now? Typically, people who are relaunching their careers are able to accelerate that movement pretty quickly because they are just getting that foot in the door. So think ahead. But by being strategic, you can absolutely make those jumps in.
Awesome. Was it scary when you were trying to jump back into the workforce?
Oh, it was terrifying, and part of this, and part of the terror is you think that people are judging you based on your time out of the workforce. You think you are being evaluated differently because had that time out, and other people won't understand. In fact, that is very rarely the case. And as a matter of fact, the person who hired me for my first role, when I later, he was my manager, and I asked him, what was it about my experience that made you hire me or made you at least interview me? The
Right.
irony is his response was that he realized I was a military spouse, and he thought, well, I know military spouses are tough, and so I want to interview this person. So it was actually not my work experience. It was my personal experience that
Oh, good to
made
know.
the interview. So
Awesome.
yeah, it really was. It was, and it really opened my eyes, and made me realize that what I was so concerned about was not necessarily the case.
That is good advice, Anne, for all of our listeners today who are in that situation, trying to relaunch a career, because confidence, I have found, is a huge issue for them, especially my stay-at-home moms who are now returning. They
Mhm.
had successful careers, made a choice, whether it was for military transition type reasons or whatever the case may have been. And I always look at, I have the interviews, the conversations, and I see all of this great stuff that they've done and continue to do. Nothing stopped. They just didn't go to a job to do it. How do we get that all on paper? And so I'm so glad you shared that, because they really need to understand what they bring to the table. They bring so many transferable skills and those kinds of things. So, all right, well, let's jump into the next question. What are the barriers that make returning to the workforce difficult, especially if you've been out for years?
Yeah, so there are a couple, and there's a couple different barriers or challenges. I think the first one is there isn't a clear blueprint for you right at that moment. If you're in a regular job day in, day out, whether you intend to go forward with that career plan that your employer has for you or not, there's a blueprint in mind. They have in their mind, you're in this position, you'll either grow in that position or maybe you'll find something different. There is no blueprint for you when you're out of that workforce. So you really need to be strategic and think through, what is my plan? The second barrier I would say is, companies don't always know where to put you in. So let's say you were a director when you left the workforce. Well, you might not have the institutional or industry knowledge you have to have that moment to return as a director, but you have great experience. You're
Right,
obviously,
right.
you're a leader, you're intelligent, you're all of those things. So where do they put you? So that can be a little challenging. The third challenge, I think, is that break in skills. Are you missing skills? Are they up to date? The beauty of that is, just go online. You can find a wealth of
Yeah,
online courses.
yeah.
Um, there is so much out there to build your skills. And the fourth thing, and you've already touched on it, and it is mental. It is, what do we perceive or believe that people consider our experience? And
Right, right.
I often, when I work with a client and they send me their draft of their resume or cover letter, they spend so much time trying to explain why they haven't been working. And it's, they feel like they have to explain it. And it's like, no, it's one sentence. I've
Right.
been focused on my family. This is what I'm doing now. And it's really, don't try to defend yourself as if you did something wrong. Explain why you made the choices you did and that it was the right choice, and now you're ready to step back in.
Right, right.
Own it and be proud of it and be confident in it.
Yes, yes. Well, two things. So Anne is a LinkedIn strategist. She is
Mhm.
certified in it. So LinkedIn offers learning options as well. So if you have a LinkedIn platform and you haven't taken advantage of that, I suggest you do that. And then confidence, yes. So, it's the mindset is so huge. If you don't change the way you think, or if you think you're less than because of what you did, then you're going to project that during an interview, perhaps your resume and your LinkedIn. The tone of it will come through, so you want to get that out of the way right away. You don't want any of that in there. If you feel like you need to explain something, get the interview first. And then in the interview, you can have a conversation. The best interviews are conversations. And if you see an opening where you can share something, then take advantage of that. But you don't need to put it in the materials in advance of that, because you don't want to close a door that hasn't yet been opened. So I totally agree with you, Anne. Totally agree.
I do think you sometimes have to give a little space in that resume to explain a career break, just because an employer might look at that, but it does not have to be a lot of space. A single line.
Yes,
all it needs to be. And then get back to the work experience and get those keywords in there.
Yes, yes. All right, let's go on to the next question. So how do you design a resume that highlights work from the past? What if you've been out for 10 years? Nowadays, they don't want to see, anything older than 10 years. Some people will say even 7 years. So what do we do, Anne?
I don't have an issue with 10 years, and I'll still include that. I will include a line to show why there's that career break. But 10 years, I don't consider that much of an issue. Now, earlier than 10 years, you have to start deciding, do we put the work experience in without dates to get those keywords in without aging ourselves too much? You kind of have to decide and balance what's the goal, what's the experience. The other piece in this is what from your time out of the workforce is relevant to your career goal. What can you frame as professional or relevant experience that maybe you didn't get paid for, but it doesn't mean it's not related? I had recently a woman who was coming back to the workforce. She was interested in project coordination work. She has moved 15 times in 20 years. Do we believe she has project coordination experience? You better believe she has project coordination experience, and we showcase that on her resume. So there's a lot of personal experiences that when you frame it correctly will strengthen your resume. We also included older work experience, but we framed it in a different way.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I had a similar situation. I had officer's wife. Her husband was an Air Force officer. She planned major events. She was a stay-at-home mom. She homeschooled, but she homeschooled not just her children, a lot of children. And then she also planned all of these events. And I said, well, what kind of events? She said, you name it. I said, how many people? She said, 250 people with a budget of XYZ. And I said, bam. That we can use, and she ended up having a magnificent resume and got in to a consulting firm, and is right there with everybody else. Like, she didn't skip a beat, because like you said, she had project management. She just used it differently and didn't realize that it could work in corporate America, so you're absolutely right. There's a lot of again, those transferable skills, those things they've done that can be used. So great example.
Some of the best experiences we have, we never got a paycheck for. And that is, you have, and on the flip side, there's work we've had that we've gotten a paycheck for that is meaningless compared to our goals. So it's always a matter of what was your experience and what are your goals and how does it relate?
Yes, it kind of reminds me of my military members who are transitioning, who have done a particular role for years, but Anne, having been exposed to the military, they get a lot of collateral duties. I get a lot of transitioning military members who end up liking the collateral duty, and that's what they want to go into. So having to pull that and create a resume that doesn't highlight so much the job they don't want anymore, but that collateral duty, so
absolutely.
Yes. All right. So then the last question I have for you is there a better way to get a job if you've been out of the workforce for an extended amount of time?
Well, I mean, and this is no different than anyone else. It's all about networking. Networking, every single person who's looking for a job, or even if you're not looking for a job today, you should be networking, because that is where, I read one article, they said, 85% of the jobs are filled by networking. Whatever that
I
number.
read an article that said it's up to 93 now. So,
Well, nothing surprising. And
right?
it makes sense, right? We always want to know ahead of time, what can that person do? Where it comes in a little different for someone returning to the workforce is they might have very well, though some of those networks might have cobwebs on them, right? So they need to brush that up. So the first thing is make sure you have the tools you need to network. You need a strong resume and strong LinkedIn profile so that when you are reconnecting, they're not viewing you as someone who's been out of the workforce. They're viewing you as someone who's ready to come back in. Really important in that phase. You cannot take for granted that they understand what you are prepared to step into. So go back to old, former colleagues, former managers, reconnect with them. You can also look at your personal connections, but here's where I'll say you have got to be strategic in those connections. You will find, and everyone is well-meaning. This is, what I experienced. I was returning to the workforce. I was college educated. I had extremely good work experience and strong work experience before I left the workforce. I informed friends that I needed to get back to work, and their answer was oftentimes trying to connect me to jobs that were not what I was looking for. They were typically jobs that were lower than what my experience warranted. There is nothing wrong with that. Please, there is a place for that, but it wasn't the job that I needed to pay the bills. So that is one of the really important things. You have to be clear. You have to be strategic. So when I networked with personal contacts, I made sure I networked with people who could get my foot in the door in the places that would get me where I needed to be. Really important point, because, and it can be disheartening to want to get back into a real career and having people trying to get you a job that's minimum wage, hourly. That can be very disheartening, and that feeds into that feeling of those negative thoughts that you have while you're doing that. So be really prepared with your resume and be strategic.
So Anne, thank you so much for sharing all this great advice. So if somebody wanted to contact you, how could they reach you?
Well, there's thewrightresumes.com. Or my email address is Anne, ANNE, at thewrightresumes.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know that, you saw me here, and I'm happy to answer questions and talk.
Okay, I'm going to put this on the screen. You double check, make sure I got it right. All right, is that right?
That is right.
Resumes.com. All right, so that's how they can get you. And she also said on LinkedIn, friends, just look her up, Anne Barnwell on LinkedIn. All right, Anne, well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. And I'm sure we'll have you on the show again to talk about another topic that will be good for our job seekers.
Well, thank you so much. It's a topic that is so important, and I'm glad to be on.
All right, have a good rest of your day.
Too.